Okay, hello, everybody. Welcome to this second session of the day. So I'm half emotional, a lot emotional. I'm loud. I'm going to move around quite a bit. And I'm going to start off by telling you how excited I actually am to be in this particular room where I sat as a young graduate student 20 plus years ago at the back. I know. At the back somewhere, and I'm standing in the front, and I'm very excited about that. This was, I guess, where it all started for me as a researcher. I dreamed of being part of a team, the teams that work together, collaborate, lead on research that brings about us designing a biomedical intervention that, remember, this was in my 20s, an intervention that allows us to have the sex that we want, when we want, and safely. An intervention that is improved to help us decide when those babies can come, and interventions that help us to carry and deliver safely without complication. Some of those dreams, I think, have been realized already to some extent. But I'm extra happy to be here with so many people working together to realize the rest of it. So again, it's wonderful to be here. I'm so excited. This is where it started for me. And this is where it's going to start for many more people as we open up Microbial Interactions Lab here at UCT. And this is also a wonderful opportunity for us to engage, figure out how we can work together to strengthen microbiome research capacity locally, continentally, globally for our health solutions. That deserves a round of applause, actually. Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I suppose I should also introduce myself. So I'm Lenine Liebenberg. I am a mucosal immunology, medical virology, and from UCT. Hello, UCT. Yes. I am a research associate at CAPRISA, the Center for the AIDS Program of Research in South Africa. I'm waving to my CAPRISA people. I am an associate professor of medical microbiology at UKZN in Durban, South Africa. I'll wave to my UKZN people too. Thank you. And I have a primary appointment right here in Cape Town at Stellenbosch University, the Center for Epidemic Response and Innovation. I'm waving to my director over there. Thank you, thank you. So, I mean, people in my field, my SDI people, they have this joke about me getting around. I don't know why. It's a good thing, right? Because when you do get around, you move around, you expose yourself in a research setting to different people, different institutions, different disciplines, different geographies, different frameworks of policies and governance, and different techniques and different culture, and you build a perspective, different expertise. And I think this is what's needed for these innovative solutions, the practical solutions, the inclusive solutions that we need for our global health problems to be addressed. I guess since I've got the floor for 10 minutes and I can speak about myself, and I'm not done speaking about myself, I'm going to give another personal example of how this works. I'm an immunologist, or at least I identify as an immunologist most days. Today happens to be one of them. And I moved recently to SERI, which conducts predominantly sequencing work. I moved there to start to develop an immunology research program that complements SERI's mission of responding to epidemics through pathogen genomic surveillance. And I often get the question, you're an immunologist, what are you doing there? You have no business as an immunologist working in a sequencing facility. She's laughing because she's heard that. And I'm going to set it straight right here, even for you, the people on Zoom. This is 300 listening to me speak about myself. CD wants to prevent people from getting and dying. I want to prevent people from getting sick and dying. Tulio and CD have established this amazing NGS platform that can identify viruses, bacteria, collections of microbes, how they're changing, where they're moving to. And that's one piece of the puzzle. As an immunologist, I'm interested in how these bugs, how they interact with the immune system, and then what we can do to prevent infections, to treat infections, harness that power. And it shouldn't just be an immunologist, it should be other disciplines as well. But this is an example of one person, one institution. Imagine if it was more people, more institutions, not only here, in other countries, the rest of Africa, the rest of the world, all working together, using different lenses to solve complex problems. Where would we be? Fixing the world, yes. And someone mentioned this to me a couple of days ago, which is why I'm wearing a very kaleidoscopic scarf as well. But complex problems require different lenses for solution. So like all the different colors, all the different patterns blending together to form something beautiful. It's kind of like the people in this room, right? We've got healthcare professionals, we've got researchers, we've got policymakers. This is a kaleidoscope, an opportunity for people to engage, mix, combine, get around a lot, create elegant solutions. This is the benefit of diversity in problem solving. And I guess I just want to re-emphasize what the problem is. You heard a little bit about it this morning, that African microbiomes are underrepresented in research. This means that if we want to realize the dream of harnessing microbiome research to prevent infections or treat infections, and we want to develop this one shot, everybody, or an umbrella approach that covers the world, or even a targeted approach for individual populations. Different regions, their microbiomes would need to be represented in the design of this intervention. And how are we going to do that if not everybody is represented in these strategies? So we have an opportunity here today to generate that kaleidoscopic analogy, picture that I described. Harnessing the power of diversity within this room to address this problem. Answering that complex problem using different lenses. So what we have done in this particular session was to invite 3 speakers to add some color, add some pattern into the kaleidoscope, into the room, to fine-tune those lenses a little bit so that we can problem solve together. We have 3 speakers who are leaders in their field, champions in public health research, women's health included. And even though they come from diverse backgrounds, I mean, there's gynae, there's cardiology, there's virology, there's sequencing, they have something that's common in their problem-solving abilities. They seem to, in my opinion, identify what the problem is effectively, figure out who would be the best people, teams to help solve the problem, and then go at it, building capacity to do it, strengthening sustainable collaborations. It's wonderful to have them here to speak with us, help us answer questions about our most missing African microbiomes, help us figure out what are the next steps? How do we get African microbiome research to a point where Africa and the world benefits? That was a long 10 minutes. Hey, I suppose now is a good time for me to actually introduce the speakers too. And I'll do that one at a time. With Dr. Moses Alobo. He will be joining us online today. Dr. Alobo is a physician, a global health expert, and social impact entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience. He leads the Science Innovation Pathways team at Science for Africa Foundation. Science for Africa Foundation is a science funding and program development organization based in Africa. Moses supports scientists in designing and conducting locally relevant research proposals, the associated technology transfer, capacity strengthening, market and policy engagement for developing critical areas of science in Africa. See what I mean? Moses has experience in implementing health and research programs in more than 30 countries in Africa in various fields of science and medicine. His other appointments have included roles such as the Clinical Research Director at GSK Africa NCD Open Lab, Sub-Saharan Africa Medical Affairs Manager, Clinical Trial Manager at Drugs for Neglected Diseases Initiative, and several board appointments, including at KEMRI. His current research interests include research prioritization and health technology assessment, and development of techniques, especially those anchored in pharmaceutical industries. Thank you very much, Dr. Moses Alobo, for being with us today, and we look forward to your presentation. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Okay. Was my introduction recorded? So oh, do I have to do it again? Okay. Unfortunately, I missed the memo, and Dr. Alobo is running a little bit late. So I will be moving on to our next speaker if he is ready. Right. My apologies for that. I'll be back again with another introduction in a few minutes. Prof. Ntobeko and Ntusi, thank you so much for being here in person. Prof. Ntusi is a trained cardiologist and the newly appointed president and CEO of the South African Medical Research Council. He joins the SAMRC from the University of Cape Town. You also want to do a dance like me. Welcome home. And Groote Schuur Hospital, where he previously served as the chair and head of department in medicine. Thank you so much for joining us today within this inaugural symposium here at Cape Town. Thank you.
Good morning, and thanks, Lenine, for that very warm and generous introduction. It's an absolute pleasure to be amongst you involved in the launch of this really important initiative, and to represent the South African Medical Research Council, not only as a funder, but as a scientist who absolutely gets the value proposition of building an African vaginal microbiome repository. This initiative is aligned with our vision of building a unique and distinctly African tapestry of scholarship for generation of new knowledge by Africans, for Africans, but also one that advances not just the generation of new knowledge, but contributes to the building a knowledge economy. So why do I think this work is important? First, the creation of a large microbiome repository is important to inform our understanding of human health, human diseases, and human physiology, as well as the biological determinants of health and disease. Can you imagine how the comparison of biomes from different corners of the world contributes to our understanding of regional differences in presentation of the same disorders? Can you imagine how a well-curated biome repository can teach us about the evolution of human disease as we compare biomes in populations over time? In 50 years' time, we may be able to go back in time and see how humans from a generation ago were different from current generations and how the evolution of the human biome has contributed to those changes. Second, as has been mentioned in the previous session, the establishment of such a repository promises both the ability to have new diagnostic and therapeutic capabilities based on these friendly bugs that have coexisted and co-evolved with us for millennia. And third, these studies of the microbiome provide a missing link in our quest to fully understand systems biology, to be able to enable a complete understanding of human physiology. And fourth, epigenetic and multi-omic studies of the microbiome will enable us to better understand the functional relationships between health and disease and how we maintain the balance and health of this diverse microbiome population. But finally, and perhaps more importantly, the establishment of this African vaginal microbiome repository is key to promote international collaboration on microbiome science. And African scientists, I believe, should rightly be taking the lead and doing this work from a part of the world that has got the greatest genetic diversity, not only amongst humans, but also in our biome. So this initiative is at the core of what we do as the SAMRC. What does the SAMRC do? Well, through our own intramural program, we conduct research that cannot be performed at universities. In universities, we establish centers of excellence and fund individual scientists to lead pioneering scholarship. We contribute to the development of innovation, supporting the entire pipeline from scientific ideas to product development and ultimately exploring pathways to commercialization. We invest substantially in the enhancement and building of capacity through our postgraduate programs, but also support for early, mid, and senior career scientists. Importantly, we affirm the value of science in society. Most importantly, though, our work is also predicated on building partnerships. These partnerships are predicated on shared value, values of equity, equality, the promotion of social justice and human dignity. And such partnerships are vital for supporting thriving women's health research ecosystems. An improved understanding of women's health is good not just for women, but for all humans. The discoveries being made through the studies of women's health and sex differences are key to advancements in personalized medicine for both sexes. There are striking sex and gender differences in many diseases. These include in autoimmune conditions, many infectious diseases, cardiovascular disease, cancers, depression and brain disorders, diabetes, obesity, substance use disorders, and many others. And while hormonal differences between men and women clearly important for explaining these differences, social determinants have also emerged as important explanatory models, including the unequal power relationships between men and women in societies, social norms that decrease education and paid employment opportunities for women, an exclusive focus on women's reproductive roles, and of course, experience of physical, sexual, and emotional violence. And while poverty is an important barrier to positive health outcomes for both men and women, poverty tends to yield far greater burden on women and girls' health due to, for example, feeding practices that lead to malnutrition, or the use of unsafe cooking that impacts women disproportionately. In addition to the factors I've mentioned, the role played by the microbiome is increasingly recognized in driving some of these biological disparities between men and women. Women's health research should therefore be an essential part of any research agenda. The field has expanded far beyond its roots in reproductive health and includes the study of health throughout the lifespan and across the spectrum of scientific investigation, basic research, as you've heard, and laboratory studies to molecular studies, clinical studies, and of course, population studies. Researchers are investigating healthy lifestyles and behavior, risk reduction, disease prevention, and searching for the best ways to diagnose and treat chronic conditions and to reduce differences in sex disparities in relation to health outcomes. So I'm really excited by this research on the vaginal microbiome as it promises to reduce the health gap for women. You may be surprised to learn that until the 1990s, essentially all research was conducted on men. Women were actively excluded from participating in most clinical trials. Why? Because of the persistent idea that female hormonal cycles were too difficult to manage in experiments, including the fear of harming potential pregnancies, and that using only one sex, men, would reduce variation in results. This exclusion of females in health research wasn't just limited to humans. It extended to research on female animals, cells, and tissue. Researchers assumed that they could simply extrapolate their male-only studies to females, a dangerous precedent that has overlooked fundamental differences between men and women for decades. Fortunately, thanks to advocacy by the Society for Women's Health Research Movement and many other groups, the US Congress passed the National Institutes of Health Revitalization Act in 1993, mandating the inclusion of women and minorities in all research funded by the NIH coming out of the US. And in the same year, the Food and Drug Administration mandated the inclusion of women in all efficacy studies. Then, in 2016, only a mere 8 years ago, the NIH implemented a new policy stating that sex as a biological variable should be factored into all preclinical research that is funded by the organization. Although researchers have been playing catch-up for the past couple of decades, this long-time bias has put the health of women globally at risk and created a huge gap in knowledge about women's health and the role that the difference between women and men plays in informing our understanding of health and disease. So my excitement and hope is that the establishment of this African vaginal microbiome repository will start to systematically reduce some of these gaps in African women's health and herald a new era of scholarship from the tip of Africa, which is relevant for our region, promises global impact. And as the SAMRC, we plan to continue to partner with you and to support in this important endeavor. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ntusi, for those words. I understand that our initial speaker is online at the moment. Wonderful. So it is my pleasure then to move to Dr. Moses Alobo from the Science for Africa Foundation. You've heard wonderful things about him over the past few minutes. And I understand he is here, hello, ready to join us and present within the symposium and continue kicking off our discussions. Thank you, Dr. Alobo.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. Hope I'm audible, just checking before I proceed.
Yes, we can. Thank you much
Okay,
for
brilliant.
joining us.
All right, thanks again. So thanks again, and sorry, I had some little bit of a challenge there before I joined when it came to presenting, but that's fine. I'd like to thank the organizers for the invitation. I would have liked to be in Cape Town with you in this particular symposium, but this was not possible due to some external circumstances that were outside my control. So I truly apologize for that, but I'm also looking forward to the discussion.
My apologies, Dr. Alobo. Would you mind clearing your slides in full screen mode? Or currently able to see your full deck?
Yeah, let me try that. I hope that's
much better.
Okay,
Perfect.
brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Please
much.
do continue.
Yeah. So I'm here to talk about you know, the how we as Science for Africa Foundation have you know, harnessed diversity with some little bit of mention here and there about how we've harnessed biodiversity in our research. So I'll be going in between those two particular topics. Truly speaking, it was a difficult topic, but let's see how much we can do about it. So we are from the Science for Africa Foundation, and we are a Pan-African non-profit public charitable organization, and we do support, strengthen, and promote science on the African continent. We do this through, you know, different, or rather looking at the continuum of the science research landscape, all the way from discovery sciences through translational sciences to implementation sciences. And on the other hand, we do focus on health, climate and environment, and also agriculture. And our sort of like motto or you know, mantra is from science to impact. And you can imagine how you've got to be collaborative, you've got to believe in cumulative sciences, and you also have to look at science as a self-connecting process if you are to actually move forward. So when we talk about diversity, there are many ways of looking at it, to say the truth. But from a scientist's point of view, the people doing the work, we usually consider demographic diversity, we usually consider cognitive diversity, and also disciplinary diversity in the creation of you know, new knowledge that we think is important. And why do we do this? It's really because we believe that When there's diversity, there's increase in innovation and creativity. At the same time, there's a higher potential of addressing global challenges where equity and inclusion can also be promoted. And then, of course, there's definitely increased scientific rigor and a better chance of expanding the relevance and impact of the knowledge that would have been created. But at the same time, when you're thinking about biodiversity, we've got to consider different ecosystems, different species, different genetic diversity areas, and then also two other things that I believe are important: incorporating indigenous and local language into it, local knowledge into it, and then also being careful that we consider ethical and equity questions that come up. And as you can imagine, the vaginal microbiome, just like any other microbiome in the human body, would definitely, benefit from looking at genetic diversity, species diversity, and also functional diversity. So within the African Academy, Science for Africa Foundation, there are many programs that we do, and this is an attempt at drawing all of them together on one page. And I won't go through all of them, but the general idea to actually show in this particular slide is that we do have a lot of initiatives and programs that we are currently doing, and there are some lessons that I'd like to share in the next probably 5 slides on one or two things that we've learned that are important. So out of our flagship program, the one that we call our hub and spoke model, over the last 10 years as a group, we have probably had or worked with 388 master's students, 335 PhD students. Gender parity has held at 53-47, male to female. But at the same time, we are happy and proud to say that if you look at first author from this particular group, that has also held at 53-47 between males and females, which I think is absolutely important. And our open access publishing, which we also believe enhances diversity, is at 80%. And again, I'll be coming back to this particular subject a little bit later in one of the later slides. But at the same time, as we support the science of it, we also support the professional staff behind it, and we've had programs that have focused and assisted the professional services that support the scientists on the continent. So I'll continue with the examples, and from the H3A community, where again we were looking at yes, biodiversity, which was of interest, because of the heterogeneity that is there on the African continent, but we were also promoting diversity in science itself. There was a look at contemporary research approaches for genomics and also the effects on the environment, on the determinants of common diseases like stroke, cancer, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, hearing impairment, just to mention a few. But I'll also add sickle cell, just because that is one of those diseases that is close to. So in it, of course, we worked with various different groups, but without going into all the details, just mention that there is some important discoveries, new knowledge that actually came out of this piece of work, and we are truly proud of it and look forward to continue working with this particular community. But of essence, there has now been some sort of progression into various different, areas of science, to the extent that we are currently doing what we are calling the GAIN study, the Genetic Associations of Infertility in Africa. And I noticed that, Professor Elizabeth Bokusi was attending this session. If you've got any questions about this, you could ask her because she was part of it. And the idea here was to, identify genetic variants that are associated with unexplained primary infertility in African women, completely neglected area, with a potential of actually giving us, some time in the future, and I don't know, that'll be maybe 10, 20 years, a better understanding of, the pathophysiology from a genetic point of view of infertility on the African continent. There's really lack of data, and again speaks to how we should include more diverse communities into our research. So in this one, 6 institutions in 5 countries that we are doing this one. And then when we consider diversity issues in the pieces of work that we do, we try as much as possible to look at the data and try and find out, okay, then what's the data telling us, and how could we potentially react to that particular data? So on this particular slide is the work we did in the Climate and Health Core that we announced at COP29 last year, and then finally awarded the groups. The interesting thing about it, if you look at some of the key observations, is that just about 1/3 of the proposals were on early warning systems. Keep in mind that we are discussing about climate and health. And then 63% of the proposals were on malaria, truly suggesting that this particular area of science is actually well developed on the African continent, with very little other, smaller numbers in other disease areas. We would have thought that when we say climate and health, we would have seen a little bit more around other diseases. And then, of course, there was a trend towards tech-based approaches, apps and equivalents, with 40% of the proposals emphasizing the digital components. And then, eventually, having groups or learning from the groups that, their understanding of gender issues in climate and health, again, was quite low. It was surprising for us that, we did not see a lot of indirect impacts of climate and health, to include things like gender-based violence, MCH, mental health, PTSD, and also potential social disruptions. Again, speaking to which areas of science are developed on the continent, and how could we potentially look at those, bring them up where possible. And one of the things we highly rely on as a group is what we call communities of practice, or learning groups, because we would like, again, to be as much as possible be collaborative, as much as possible leverage on cumulative generation of knowledge, and then also be as open as possible, be as inquisitive as possible, and allow for a self-correcting process to push us closer and closer to what we believe would be the definition of truth and/or new knowledge. So we do have a 4-step process of prioritize, design, fund, and oversee. And we rely on, elite, I would say, minds within the African continent who can actually be open and have a co-creation process. And indeed, the GAIN study that I just mentioned a little bit earlier was written by, elite scientists on the continent, including geneticists, clinical trialists, program managers, and also fertility experts, really focusing on what's important for Africans on the continent. And if we were to tackle this question, then how exactly could we look at it that would be beneficial to the African continent? So we've done this in other areas like MNCH, food security and nutrition, COVID-19 drug discovery, amongst others. So at the end of it all, I guess I have maybe 2 more slides to go. Once the research is published, we do encourage and ascribe to the open science principles for sharing, supporting the use, reuse, and reproducibility of research, so that as much as possible research would be discoverable and will be accessible to more Africans on the continent. And therefore, we do have open publishing platform, which we call Open Research Africa, which has seen, at least to date, just about 220,000 article views, 20,000 downloads, 665 citations or cross citations in peer-reviewed articles, and 3 citations in international policy documents. So at the end of it all, we have some insights from our experience supporting science on the continent, which I believe we would like to share with you on peer learning and co-creation, which I've already mentioned. We always have a very interesting discussion all the time when we talk about balancing excellence with equity. And in this particular session, I dare say balancing excellence with diversity, or the search for diversity, equity, and inclusion. For the simple reason that there'll always be exemplar groups on the continent, but if we're to go for capacity building, then we really have to think about how this could be done. So our hub and spoke model is really one of those that attempts to answer this particular question. And then, of course, we are also interested on supporting strong research environments, building the backroom and/or the innovation ecosystem, and making sure that the science that is coming out of the continent is actually going to scale or reaching its maximum potential. And we do this by working with various different groups, including monitoring, evaluation and learning groups, and also finance and grant management. The important thing is to continue building trust within key stakeholders, including funders, our partners, and also implementers, and also having value for money through equitable collaborations. That's absolutely important, and we believe in the principle of equitable collaborations. At the end of it all, we believe and think that if we build science leaders in various different areas, then we can be able to at least improve our scientist researcher to population ratio that is there on the continent, compared to other regions, and probably even improve our output. And then at the end of it all, have as much collaborations as possible that are beneficial for us. So those are the aspects that I thought I should discuss in this particular meeting. Otherwise, thank you so much for having us talk about or give some insights from the work that we do. Thanks again, and back to you, Prof.
You hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alobo. Is it on now? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Alobo, for all your insights now. Please do stick around in the next 20 minutes. We'll have a general discussion about the content from our speakers. And until then, our next speaker, it's a little bit of pressure here for me, considering he's my director. Let me do this right. So, Prof. Tulio de Oliveira. So this is a long one. It's full page. He's a professor in bioinformatics in both University of KwaZulu-Natal and Stellenbosch University in South Africa, the associate professor of global health at the University of Washington, and also the deputy director of the Wellcome Sanger Institute's Genomic Sequencing Unit in the UK. In 2021, he founded the Center for Epidemic Response and Innovation, CERI, which focuses on sequencing and tracking epidemics. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he led the team that discovered the beta and Omicron variants of the virus. And for this, he was honored by the South African Medical Research Council with a gold medal award, by the German government with the German Africa Prize, and was listed among the Time magazine's 100 most influential people of 2022 and among the Times 100 in health in 2024. Prof. Tulio de Oliveira, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Lenine. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a great pleasure to be here, and it's fantastic what Basic Lenine and Joanne has put together. And for me, it's really special to see our universities coming together because it's really time that if we work together, we really lead the world. So that's the main information that I have to give you in that presentation. So I was given the task about talking about capacity building in Africa, and I would just bring a few examples on how we have done that in the past few years. Yeah. So first, like, why did we set up CERI? Yeah. I redirect another successful institute called CRISP at UKZN. Yeah. And then we got quite busy during the pandemic, and then we decided to set another institute. Why that? Yeah. The reason for that, it is because we think that it is really important to bring, like universities bring together, but also to create something that can go not only from research, but that can enhance biomedical discovery and that developing treatment, diagnostic, and prevention of human disease. So CERI is quite a bold idea to see how we can leverage science for really impact that can have an impact in the ground. Yeah. And then today, I know that you're going to get a lot of information in this conference, but the main 3 points that I want to take from my talk is that we are really trying to move on sustainability. And the only way to generate sustainability is to let people in Africa to lead programs so they can raise the funding to do that. And we need a focus, to lead a lot of people. And we decide to invest a lot on climate and epidemics. And the last thing to show that as we do that, we also have to make sure that science, it is to response, not only for scientific papers. Yeah. So in the beginning of the pandemic, we set up a very bold program that brought back most of the universities in South Africa, fully funded by our own government. Yeah, we engaged by the Department of Science and Innovation, the South Medical Research Council, to create the network of genomic surveillance that brought 8 institutions in South Africa, and quite important, not only universities, but all of them mostly next to a green box. That's the NHLS or the NICD. And we worked together. We were the second global network to set up in a country, to be exactly 1 week after the UK. When we discovered the first variant, the beta variant, we grow a much bigger program. We decided that the idea is not only stay on genomics, but work with virology, immunology, clinical trial, epidemiological modeling. And I put together a consortium with Willem Hannekon, and also funded by the DSI and MRC, that we would meet weekly, around 500 scientists, including Ntobeko, LGB, which I call It took me weeks to understand that LGB means Linda Gale Becker. And we did. So our government put around 150 million rand from the DSI and the MRC. We leveraged over 3 billion rand of external funding, and we really managed to move science on COVID to a next level in South Africa to get many clinical trials vaccine. And then after that, we have a bigger problem. Yeah, as we do discovery, they hoard vaccines. So we put another big program that South Africa managed to compete with 41 countries to win the mRNA hub that now going to not only discovery to production of the vaccines. Yeah. In the meantime, we decided to create SERI, a new institute on the biomedical research innovation building, a very big investment from Stellenbosch, which all of you are invited to come on Wednesday to visit. Yeah, over R1 billion to construct the building and many more on equipment and personnel, really creating some of the best facility in the world, all funded by Stellenbosch and our national government. We decided... Yes. Yeah, 30% come from the national government. We decided not to get external fund because that's a way that we can build on that as a local investment to then engage with external funders. As part of that, also involved like a lot of core facilities. So SERI, it is a genomics core facility. It's open for everyone. We also set up this very big biorepository that really to allow to really store and manage samples well. And we have here Tulio, he's one of our professors, is giving a talk next. Really already thinking, how can we work a lot with microbiome there? And then we thought that that would be our moral compass to not only have all this investment for South Africa. We engaged with the Africa CDC and the WHO AFRO to create what we call the Africa Pathogen Genomic Initiative. Yeah, SERI and CRISPR produced data for 24 African countries. We sit what you call a specialized genomics and bioinformatics facility with a mandate not only to produce genomic data, but also to support on capacity building every member state. Yeah. And that's what we did. Yeah. We really worked together as we have never seen before in the history of Africa. Yeah. We put together these big programs in Africa. They lead from our group that we had to decide to do is to do holistic collaboration, not only share data, but to share all the protocols, data set, analysis scripts. And as we analyze the data, to train people in the program. The first paper was published in Science, 148 African collaborators. The second one also 340 collaborators. Really coming that when we start working together, we can really do quite a lot of things in Africa. Then we got funded a very program, quite large for a bigger funder, one funder. So we needed a basket of funders. Over $10 million went in this program. And we hosted in the last 3 years 567 fellows from 49 African countries that come either for short, middle term, and long-term fellowships to sometimes stay with years in a way that then they can be trained not only on genomic, but data analysis. And also quite important that when they go back, they get our support. It's very important that we train people and send them back. So what these fellows do, they are distributed in most of African countries, is that if they see an unusual outbreak, we will support them with protocols. We will ship them reagents so they can do that in real time. And we have done that dozens of examples as described Rift Valley fever for vaccine design, a new outbreak of dengue in Ethiopia, in Burkina Faso, a new strain living chikungunya from the Sylvatic cycle in Senegal, big outbreaks, explosive of cholera. I'm just going to give you one example from that. That's only happened the last 2 years, and that's very exciting because this support people to be back in the country and respond. One of them that we are quite excited, it was a challenge that we are put by the mRNA consortium. It is how can we select and characterize the strains of Rift Valley so a vaccine can be developed. I have met with Petro, the head of Afrigen. She's so excited. She said that she have a functional Rift Valley vaccine entering clinical trial. The first one have been developed in Africa. And what we did is to collaborate between South Africa and Kenya with colleagues at ILRI, with colleagues at SEMBI, to first do a whole analysis of all the genomes of Rift Valley, identify all the main lineages. We came with a lineage classification system and give them for vaccine design. Because that's the beauty of mRNA. You can put many lineages and follow these lineages, and our genome constructs that what was added in Afrigen. At the moment, we are working with quite a few more, including West Nile and Mpox with Afrigen. Another thing that we are quite proud, is also fast response to Mpox. You may be aware that we are the ones that work with the WHO to change the name of the virus. Was a very discriminative way about that. We came with a new classification system, but as we train our fellows, we also send them back to do that characterization. And was one of our fellows at the INRB in Kinshasa, that described recently the new strain of Mpox. So what's happened in the East DRC? We have a very large outbreak, was very different from the rest of the country, was very concentrated. And from the first time, over 60% of the infections were women and young women. When we sequence that and analyze, we identify a whole new clade, completely new emergence that's now adapted for sexual transmission, is starting in a mine town and starting to a widespread in East Africa. That's what is the clade 1B. We engage with the WHO and the Africa CDC, and that's what is this new clade that allow the emergence to be called back, and vaccines to be available in Africa. Quite important, one thing that we have to break in Africa is this discrimination between languages. So one thing that we work a lot is with Anglophone and Francophone countries. This is very important. So we just got funded with Professor Muyemba, a big fellowship program that then what we're going to be doing is continuous capacitating the people from the DRC and INRB. And we are bringing 17 people to be here to really follow that, not only at master, doctoral, postdoctoral, and research. And that's something that we really have to do, is to break this Francophone, Anglophone, and Lusophone diversity in Africa. One thing that our team is very, very passionate, and I have Cheryl Baxter here, the head of my science support unit, it is to train people not only on data analysis, but how to write and manage big grants. And we have a big program that we're engaging with dozens of partners in Africa that we train them on grant rights, financial management, and putting grants together. And that's something that's extremely important, because we have to get a lot of these grants to be managed and be awarded in Africa. I will just finish with two quick examples that I also think that the work in Africa cannot be just isolated. We also have to work with other global South countries. Sometimes we only think about Africa, Europe, and America. The program that we did, very similar as we did in Africa, has also have been done in Latin America and South America, where we have trained hundreds of fellows in multiple laboratories. And when they see a new outbreak, we will support them to describe that. So similar as we did in Africa, we did dozens of them in the last 2 years in Latin America. One of them that got global attention in the last few months is the new emergence of Oroposhi virus. It's a new emergence of a virus. It's an arbovirus transmitted by mosquitoes, small mosquitoes, midges, has always been centralized in the Amazon region, but for the first time leave the Amazon region and start spreading multiple states in Brazil, and now in Colombia, in Cuba, and introductions in Italy. And what we did is within days of that discovery, it is because we have trained people in multiple laboratories to describe all the genomes that they have seen, identify some of the evolution that allowed that. But more important than that also is then to bring what is causing that spread of that. And that's work that Ruria Tegali, the head of our data science, is leading, is when we bring a large amount of environmental data together to try to understand what is spread of this pathogen. And the main thing that we saw, that one of the big reasons why I have lived Amazon is because you have large deforestation, lots of forests, and then start cocoa and banana plantations. Quite interesting to see how the effect of some time allowed to do that. And then I thought by finish with an example of a bacteria. Yeah. So one thing that we also have done, it is support a lot of outbreaks, response and characterization of cholera, first Malawi, Cameroon. But that was a very unusual that we work in Haiti. Yeah. Haiti have finished cholera many years ago, and then in 2024, a large outbreak happened again. Yeah, 82,000 cases, 1.2 thousand deaths. Yeah, most affected age groups is 1 to 4 years old. Yeah, really suggests a lack of immunity. Really concentrated in a geographic area of that. Yeah. What we thought that would be another introduction, yeah, similar as it happened in Malawi or Cameroon, a new introduction coming that would be there. But to our surprise, very, very surprised, was not a new introduction, was a re-emergence of cholera from the environment. Yeah. Just to understand the cholera lineages, they get numbers. Yeah, we have the African lineages that we count 1 to 13. The South Latin American lineages, we count them in number. So the one that reemerges is Latin American tree. Very, very, very surprising, because that's what we normally do, this evolution of pathogens. In the X, it is the dates. Yeah. In the Y, it's the genetic variety. And then what we saw that since the last big outbreak in 2014, we have changed to what you call a different variant, which got the name of Inaba, that have been circulating until 2018 and had that disappear. But what we saw is that some of the strains exist and that came back, completely changing from the Inaba to the Ogawa again, causing the outbreak. And what we found that these were samples that have existed in the environment, very unusual for cholera. And then that was followed a big climate event, yeah, and then that had big floods, and then after riots in the country that got major problem in the water supply, that's re-emerged, yeah, in the end of 2022, caused a large outbreak, very high case fatality rate, yeah. And we could see how it reemerged, how it is spread, and how it came back. Very surprising, highlighting how these strains can now live in the environment, and as we have extreme events, they can reemerge. Yeah. Because we also like a lot of adventures, and the idea is to not only respond to new outbreaks, we decide to engage in big viral discovery program. I have Mariah here, one of our ID specialists. We work with the Brazilian Navy and the fuel crews to now put a whole sequencing lab inside a boat. These are big boats that go up in the Amazon and the Pantanal, really start sampling the environment and try to detect pathogens before they emerge. Yeah, it's quite exciting. And I was just discussed with Claudina that we should do the same here in South Africa, especially with our big biodiversity of animals, to try to really characterize these pathogens before they become emergents. Yeah. So to conclude, yeah, we have done very intense activities in Africa, 567 fellows that now they see an outbreak, we support them with protocols, reagents, and training. The idea should be a holistic consortium that involve like not only training, but quick response, and to put genomic surveillance at public health where they are. We have to really make sure that these fellows are supported when they go back to the African partners. Yeah, we are starting engagement also with South Asian countries to add that to a new level. Yeah, and now we have a new army of well-trained people in Africa. Now we need to elevate them to the next level. This means make sure that they don't only respond, but they start leading these programs. Yeah. So we have to acknowledge a lot of funders. This program is not cheap. Yeah, just the fellowship program over $10 million. Yeah, plus the lab and the response. And just to finish, yeah, one of the things that we are really trying to launch in the next few years, a few months, yeah, is what you call the STARS Fellowship. That is how to move people from intermediate scientists to senior scientists. Yeah. And that's a big program to try to close the gap between the Francophone and the Anglophone. We're going to do that with the Pasteur Institute. Yeah. We then provide medium term to advanced translational fellowships, young professional program, and long-term mentoring and placement opportunities. Really start moving people from medians to senior researchers, because that's, I think, is the big gap in Africa. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much to all our speakers. And now we'll be opening up our discussion session for the day. So please ask our speakers in person to join us in front. Online, if Dr. Alobo is still available to join the discussion now in this next couple of minutes. Within this session, you've heard quite a bit about the importance of women's health and reproductive health and the support of national and international research institutes and governments and funders to support this. You've heard about African research excellence and supporting science in Africa and the importance of building partnerships. What did you say? If we work together, we will lead. Huh? Right. And this is an opportunity for us to engage with the speakers about these points, about trying to understand how to get microbiome research, African microbiome research, to benefit Africa and the world as well. We've heard quite a bit of points today about, from their perspectives, how to get this done. We've spoken a little bit about collaborations, partnerships, building infrastructure, researcher development, building research ecosystems, including diversity of disciplines, of geographies, of my entire slide within our strategies to do this. Here's an opportunity for us to explore those concepts a little further with the experts in the room throughout the floor and in front as well. People online, if you'd like to pop your questions in the Q&A, you're welcome to do that, and I'm able to access them from the front, and I'm happy to read them out aloud as well. So, and people within the room, there are already hands coming up. Everybody wants to be part of this. We do have some roving mics around to facilitate the discussion. Joanne. So, I think one of the
You can
I think something all three speakers have spoken about is the hub and spoke model of collaboration and how that works. And I suppose my question to you is the purpose of us bringing everyone together here in terms of our partners, governments, agencies, is like, how should that look if we are, one of the calls to action is that we're going to, following on from this meeting, launch this call to action for a national platform for microbiome research where we can all leverage off each other's expertise. So, like, what are the key ingredients? Because I think each one of you, Lenine mentioned, have been invited because at some level or another, you are really amazing at bringing the right people on board to answer the problems that you need to. So just sort of some wisdom or thoughts and advice from maybe each one of you.
Thanks, Joanne. So I would say we need to invest in sustainable programs for high quality training of scientists, and then to build a critical mass of people with both the technical expertise to lead this work, but people who are supported through enabling environments to be able to thrive and to support, as Tulio has described, a network of scientists who are able to work collaboratively to answer the fundamental questions in relation to human health in our part of the world. And as I've tried to make the point strongly in my talk, what is good about questions that we answer about Africa is actually good for the rest of the world because of the huge amount of genetic diversity, not only amongst humans from this part of the world, but also from our microbiomes, which provides critical advances in knowledge for the rest of the globe. I don't know if you want to add, Tulio.
Yes, I think more specific for the microbiome. Yeah, so that's a lot of discussions that I have with Lenine and with Tulani. Yeah, is that for the first time in Africa and in South Africa, we have more than enough sequences and capacity, and we should build the networks on what exists. Yeah. So, for example, we, together with the Africa CDC, we put sequences in 39 African countries. Yeah, which now, so that's why we are providing reagents. Now it's easy to build to that for responding to cholera, to dengue, to chikungunya, to yellow fever, Rift Valley. Yesterday we are discussing with Rwanda on the Marburg. Not that interests you guys very much, but to sequence microbiome is exactly the same process. Yeah, it's the same equipment. It is the same thing. How we sequence cholera so quick is by using the same protocol that we use to sequence TB. Yeah, so now you have all these facilities that are there. It's just about build a layer instead of doing that. Of course, that as academics, we are very bad on doing that. Everyone wants to have the shiny little lab, yeah, but it is good to build in what exists. That's what I suggest with microbiome. So, for example, when Tulani came to our group, or Lenine, so we do the microbiome sequencing. You are not trying to run a microbiome genomics facility because it's silly. So he can really focus on the big objective, and we did that. So we have now all this capital infrastructure that COVID helped, and with South Africa was helped in the past with HIV and TB that you can build to leverage. So when the world got so surprised how we did so well in COVID pandemic science response, we were not, because we are building very fantastic infrastructure that was developed, and now we can build that again for microbiome.
Dr. Alobo, would you like to comment as well?
Yes, thank you so much. So I'll take the question from a government perspective, government angle. So, I mean, Science for Africa Foundation, we've been working with governments on the African continent, and from the way the question has been answered, I actually, or asked, I see an opportunity of the vaginal microbiome percolating or becoming important for African governments to start thinking about. For the simple reason that governments are usually purchasers of innovation. And we've actually seen, like, for example, Alzheimer's and the UK, governments putting in money to actually promote this particular area of science. At the same time, we've been having discussions with, the WHO afro, and various different, grand challenges, we call them. So national country grand challenges, innovation cohorts that are pushed and or facilitated by governments on the African continent. So the question therefore becomes, how could we potentially integrate, research on the vaginal microbiome and make it a priority for these particular groups that are interested? So the essential question becomes, how do we localize the vaginal microbiome area as a research question so that it directly, talks to the various different policymakers that are there on the continent, or even use, because governments can also be catalysts of innovation. So therefore, meaning, are there levers that we can actually hook onto this vaginal microbiome area, and then showcase it as an exemplar way of developing research on the continent, to the extent that we get our governments interested. So, for example, the picture that Tulio showed, of the Biorepository Biodiversity Genomics Institute, that kind of, if it could potentially be made into a case study, but now from a vaginal microbiome point of view, would actually, accelerate interest in this particular area. And then lastly, from me, governments also are interested in regulations and policy making. We say rules are usually made for bad people and or laws. So therefore, the question becomes, eventually at some point, when governments wants to apply regulations and or whether it's ethical considerations or any other types of guidelines in this particular area, are we, or does this group therefore take the lead and push that, so that governments are feeling that we are actually working with them? I guess that's what I wanted to say. So thanks again.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's take the lead. Let's work with others who are interested in the same agenda. Let's do it. What did you say? Again, we work together, we lead, we make that change. And what you're saying here, Dr. Alobo, is that there are overlaps in other models. The microbiome in the female genital tract can benefit from research in other settings that have engaged governments and stakeholders and developed vaccines or research agendas that focus on promoting that sort of research agenda within Africa and the world. And it's been a bit, there are mentions of the importance of partnerships, like with government, to do that. I suppose I could ask the speakers here to touch on what you just mentioned about engaging partnerships for microbiome research. I mean, it might not have happened previously. For example, Tulio, how would your experience in building partnerships, what have you learned there that can be translated into the microbiome research sphere?
So especially with the government or with researchers?
Yeah. Well, everybody, go ahead.
Yeah. With the government, never surprise them. They hate surprise, not Claudina? Make sure that they know what is coming and that to deliver on the agenda is quite important. Yeah. And that's one of the things why we always gently force our government and the MRC to force us, to fund us, even that's a small percentage, so we can deliver in the agenda. And with other researchers, yeah, make them more successful, make them take the glory for the results. That's what they get. And so, for example, the Genomics facility is open for all. We only basic charge at reagents. We subsidize sequencing. And once we produce sequence for other groups, they own the sequence. So if they are successful, yeah, then we will be successful. Yeah.
So I spoke a little bit in my talk about our approach to partnerships. It's fundamental to the work that we do as the SAMRC. And I emphasize that we look for partners who share similar values as us. These partnerships are built on a search for equity and equality, but importantly, built on trust. And we look for partners who we are able to co-create with. And so we are able to co-fund through leveraging the investment from the South African taxpayers and multiply that multifold through these partnerships. But the critical thing for us is that we don't want partners who tell us what they want to do in Africa. We want to enter spaces where we can drive the agenda collectively with our partners. And I think part of the reason the SAMRC has had such a huge global influence has because the investment by the South African government and taxpayers who enable us to enter those partnerships on an equal footing. And for us, that's really important.
We have a couple more questions in the audience. Could I have a mic here to Ntobeko?
A question for you, Dr. Ntusi. I was wondering, have you been able to find such partners in Europe apart from the EDCTP? I'm just curious. I'm from Europe myself, and I'm really wondering how Europe can help.
Yes, so we've got multiple European partners. So we work very closely with the European Union through their Horizon program, including EDCTP, but a number of other programs. One of our biggest partnerships with the European Union is through their precision medicine platforms. But in addition, we have a working relationship with banks. One of the biggest investments in this country come from KfW, the German Development Bank, which is helping us to finance the infrastructure for mRNA vaccine production in this country, and the SAMRC is the implementing partner. In addition, we've got very strong partnerships with multiple foundations from Europe who co-invest with us in scholarships, in fellowships, but also in providing research grants as well as infrastructure. We also work very closely with European pharma who work with us to build opportunities for health systems strengthening. So we have a partnership with Novartis, but many other European farmers. We also work closely, for instance, with Thermo Fisher, who allow us to renovate our laboratories and to take graduates who have been unemployed, science graduates who have been unemployed, to reskill them. And most of them are able to enter the job market successfully. So we have multiple European partnerships that we leverage. And of course, would love to learn how we can build on more of those for the future.
Great, thank you. I understand that Dr. Alobo, Moses, your hand's up. I'm sorry, I can't see it. I'm getting messages saying that you would like to contribute to the conversation. Please do go ahead.
No problem at all. Thanks again. I just wanted to chime into the discussion there because the term partnerships can definitely be wide. So the way we look at it at Science for Africa Foundation, we consider, communities of practice where we put our scientists and all groups of, elite individuals who would like to actually come together and focus on a certain question. At the same time, we do have funders forums where we bring together groups of, funders who are interested in a certain area. Or sometimes you can have other types of stakeholders that, are neither funders and neither they, scientists, but they're interested in the area for one reason or another, including, supranational organizations. But at the end of the day, what I could say and/or hazard is that we've got to create value and also exchange value out of these particular partnerships, have or allow excellence to actually drive the partnerships, and then in a way couple that with some collaborative stance that allows the partnerships to actually flourish, allow the group to develop, which at the end of the day would drive the kind of governance model that you actually choose. Are you going for a contract? Are you going for an award? Are you together in an advisory committee? And exactly, what are you going to be discussing every time you actually meet? But at the end of it all, partnerships that thrive are the ones that have quite a bit of camaraderie, and I've seen that quite a bit on the African continent. Yeah, I guess that's what I'll say. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We have. I'm so sorry, Claudina's hand was. Currently, you win, Claudina.
Sure, this thing is working. Just to follow up on that, specifically being from government, we actually work very closely from Department of Science and Innovation. We work very closely with the researchers, the universities, but also with the Medical Research Council. And we actually have science agreements with most of the European countries. We also have a specific science agreement with the European Union. So, and that is when we start looking at co-funding projects. And on the medical side or the health side, we use the Medical Research Council to be our agency then as such. And as Professor Ntusi has mentioned, we're part of the precision medicine program with the MRC is actually the co-chair of IC Permit. Then Dr. Alobo has mentioned the African Health Research and Innovation Funders Forum, where we together across Africa with the MRC taking the lead on this, actually bring all the funders together and we discuss specific topics. And it's funders across the world, specific topics, and say, this is what's important for Africa. Who's prepared to join us? And taking further to make sure that we don't fall over one another, but it's actually one way of going forward. And genomics is definitely one of them. And the women's health has been identified as one of the priorities. So it's just sort of, we need to have that specific discussion then with funders. So okay, this is what we need. This is what we're bringing to the table. And who's prepared to join us in it? Okay.
Thank you.
So thanks, Lenine. So my question, I think, is going to go to Tulio, although certainly Ntobeko and Dr. Ayola may also want to chime in, and it's partly answered by Claudina, but not entirely. So I'm going to pose to Tulio the age-old problem of the brain drain. And I love your sort of Africa Stars program, and I really wish it success. But the ongoing problem is follow the money. The money tends to come from the north, if it's big money, and often we lose our greatest stars, not only to northern academia, but northern commercial, sort of private. So what can we be doing differently to hold on to these and to create more stars, as you've said?
Okay, thank you. So two quick answers. Yeah, that. In South Africa, that was one of the reasons why I decided to create SERI. Yeah, because it is, as we went or not, it is much easier to attract talent to Stellenbosch and Cape Town than to Durban. And I love Durban to pieces. I still have an institute there. So we have to create a place that people want to come and that have the infrastructures like the IDM or the BMRI that people can do high level science. Yeah. About they staying in the country and responding. Yeah. In my mind, there is only one way, is that they start being able to be PIs in grants, because if you are just co-PIs or collaborator, you always will live where the money is going, and that's the only things that you need to do. But it's not an easy task to do that, because a lot of time the problem is not the individual. We may have someone that's fantastic scientist, but is the infrastructure exists in the setting to manage big granting and to do financial management and audits and manage dozens of grants. Like UCT had a fantastic research office. We invest a lot in our one at SERI. So that's another thing that people don't realize. Sometimes we don't have to fund just the scientists. We have to fund the basic infrastructure, because that's what funders want. What funders want is well-managed money, good reports, and impact. And sometimes scientists cannot do that alone. Yeah.
LGB, perhaps I can add a slightly more balanced and nuanced perspective. So I used to be very concerned about the brain drain, but now I've become less and less concerned about it. You know, when I took over as chair of medicine, we took very seriously our responsibility in meeting the training needs of the African continent. And annually, we trained tens, if not hundreds, of specialists. And I was dismayed, in fact, distraught, when I realized more than 50% of them were not staying in their countries. These were, you know, kidney specialists who would return to their countries without a dialysis program, and people who had been trained in all areas of clinical expertise and go back to their countries where the basic infrastructure for them to be able to use their skills didn't exist, and they would end up in countries like the UK, Canada, US, New Zealand, and Australia. And I started training my own PhD students primarily in cardiovascular genetics and cardiovascular imaging. And the same thing would happen when they'd return to their own countries. They couldn't do the work they were trained for, and ended up going to other countries. But I have started to appreciate that while the brain drain results in an acute loss of these highly skilled technical people if the environments are not enabling, there's also huge benefits from what I consider now to be brain circulation, with many of these highly skilled people continuing to either contribute in developing capacity from where they are, which benefits African ecosystems, but also large numbers of them 5-10 years later of being based in the global north as the environments in their countries change, coming back to contribute. And if it's not immediate, the benefits of that circulation do accrue later.
Like Lenine that went around and came back. Yeah.
I was just going to say that. Dr.
They get around.
Yes, it's important to get it around. I think, but it's also important to come back and make sure that the impact that you want to have does stand. Dr. Alobo, would you also like to contribute to this discussion about brain drain from the perspective of the SF?
Absolutely. So just a quick one. And it's really because of what we've learned from our drug discovery program, where, I mean, it was basically a re-entry grant that eventually attracted, you know, one of our elite medicinal chemists back to Accra, Ghana, to establish a drug discovery, you know, group there. And it's now thriving to the extent that it's now developing into a hub. One of the things that we've learned from him, Richard Ameu, and many other practitioners on the continent, is build your own stable and then create your own thoroughbreds, and try as much as possible to make them, you know, African, you know, to the core. If I was to sort of like mention the topic that I was discussing on. And when you do that, even if eventually at some point they leave, I will defer to what you know, Ntobeko has said. You will be actually sending out ambassadors to the world about the work that, you know, we are trying to do. continent. So for me, I think creating our own stables and rearing our own thoroughbreds would be the best way to go.
Just one quick comment. Yeah, one quick comment.
Sit down.
Yeah. I think that we should be more ambitious than that. Yeah. At the moment, we are repatriating a lot of top African science back here, and we are stealing some of the best American scientists to move here. So I think that here in South Africa, we can be even more ambitious. Yeah. Let's not just let our brains go and be happy about that, but let's do the same as they do. Let's create the environment to track the best brains. Yeah.
I think our time is just about up now. We've ended up on such a fantastic discussion on researcher development, leadership development, developing the next generation of scientists that will help us solve the problem at hand. I think this was something that was mentioned quite strongly in the first session, and I'm glad that it was reiterated here and likely will be throughout the symposium. Building a research question, an ecosystem, as you said, Joanne, is so very important, and it's one of the reasons that all of us are here today. Thank you for being part of the colors and patterns of this kaleidoscope. Thank you.
Thank you, bye.